Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. Thank you for joining us. The shots you were seeing before were from Bird Gardens of Naples. They've got some live cams on some of their cages, and it was just great sitting here watching them while I was waiting to go on. And you can go to twitch.tv/Bird Gardens of Naples and subscribe. And the cool thing is, there are opportunities to feed snacks to the macaws. So check it out. It's definitely cool. And it's when it's rainy and cold wherever you are, you can just flip on the Bird Gardens Twitch cams and watch and pretend that you're in a warm place. So just a few reminders. As always, you can like the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way you get notifications if we do a sale or a pop-up event. You can follow the Leather Elves on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also are working on the Rockstar Rescue Tour. We're almost there, you guys. It's the end of July. We're hitting the road. We're going to be on the road for 3 weeks. You can see all of our wonderful sponsors there. I can't thank them enough for helping us make this happen. And we'll be going live on the Rockstar page, and we'll probably share it to the Leather Elves page. The dates have remained the same. A couple of rescues on the tour list they're not going to be able to meet with us, so we're just going to get them their stuff when we can. So, all right. So my guest tonight is someone that I've seen his stuff on Facebook, and I was thinking, this guy's pretty impressive. I like what this guy has to say. And so I reached out to him, and he agreed graciously to be a guest. So I want to introduce you guys to Mark Pruden. Um, hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's beautiful. It's a pleasure to be on the channel today. This is great.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So how hot is it in New York today?
Today was actually a pretty nice day. We're looking at about 72 degrees. It was about 95 2 days ago, so we've got some relief now.
When it gets to be 97 in Maine, we know we have a problem.
Oh,
And it was the other day. So let me just let everybody, I'm going to read your bio real quick, Mark, and then we'll get right down to it. Mark is the host of the African Gray Journal on YouTube, where he shares his personal knowledge and care techniques for African gray parrots. He began breeding green cheek conures at age 14, later expanding to Senegal parrots, African grays, and he continued for 15 years. Today, Mark focuses on educating fellow parrot enthusiasts through his videos while working professionally in finance. So you have a real life besides birds?
yeah, I do. I try to balance the two, but the birds always take over. So
I used to have a real life before birds, and then it sucked me in and it became all consuming, and here we are.
it's a beautiful thing, though. It's great.
It's
It's a
true.
great
It is
world.
true. For those of you that haven't seen Mark before, he's been visiting some really cool places. He was at the Gabriel Foundation. He was at Everything Birds in Tampa. He was at Parrot Stars up in Chicago, all amazing places. Thank you for sharing those with us.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. It's just definitely a passion of mine to just expose the world to the great things that we're doing in aviculture. So I just want to
Yeah.
continue to keep pushing that and sharing as much as I can.
So TJ, who is an aviculturist, says he didn't know that a real life outside of birds was possible. TJ, it's a goal. I'm just saying. So we need to strive for that balance. But I think, Mark, you might need to come on again, and we'll talk about how to strike balance in
Oh
aviculture.
yeah, I'll have to string up a course. We'll see what happens.
There we go. I will market it for you. It won't be hard, so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, So just so you guys know, when I reached out to Mark, I said to him like, "Hey, what do you want to do? What do you think is a good topic?" And he came up with our topic for tonight, and I was super excited. Reviving and growing aviculture in a digital age. So those of us with a little bit more gray, um, it's silver. It's not gray. We the digital age can be scary, but the first thing that we kind of talked about, Mark, was that aviculture, there's a chance that we're going to lose what we've got.
Right.
So, I mean, okay, so before I'm looking across my office, I've got Parrots of the World, the Photo Arc, Macaw's book, Birds of the World. That's how you know it started out. That's how the learning happened, and we bought the books by Rick Jordan and Tony Silva and all of that, and
Mhm.
then people shared a little bit of information. But how has that connection changed, in your opinion?
It's definitely changed a lot, and I can just get into exactly how I got into aviculture and what the evolution that I saw that really just blew my mind. So
Yeah.
I jumped in. I was about 10 years old, and there was a pet store right near my house called Parrots of the World in Long
Hmm.
Island, run by the great Mark Marone. So I would
Yep.
go there every single weekend. I'm playing with the macaws. I'm playing with the cockatoos, the African grays, just tremendous amounts of different species and species that today would be considered very rare. He just had an abundance of them. And one day he walked inside of the bird room, and I saw him begin to hand feed the birds. And as a 10-year old, I pretty much said, hey Mark, I love what you're doing. This is fascinating. Can I hand feed with you? And then he said, no, you're going to have to raise your own. You have to get your own pair and breed your own. So I was devastated at that point, but that's what really planted the seed and really just made me so almost obsessed with parrot keeping. I wanted to learn everything there was about parrots. So I went on to Google, of course. I'm looking at different websites. I'm looking at articles. I'm in Yahoo Answers. I'm in Yahoo Groups. This is when Yahoo was pretty popular, right?
Hmm.
And that's really how I gathered all of the information that I learned to then go on and breed different types of birds. So uh, after all that research, I saved up my money, which was about $20 a week. My mom would give me an allowance. I saved up for 2 months and got my first pair of cockatiels. And that's when I started breeding. So just immersing myself in the hobby and learning as much as I could, it was great. But now, fast forwarding to 2025, a lot of those websites, a lot of those different forums no longer exist.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with, the great avicultures that we had, they've passed on and their family didn't maintain the website. So the website then went away. Like the late, great Jean Pattison, I went to check out her website to send an article to a friend that was looking to learn about breeding African greys, and it wasn't available. So I was just devastated that golden information was no longer here for us to share. So
So,
that really
so being an old person, I might be able to get you a hard copy of that. Just
really okay.
yeah, we'll talk more about that. But I just wanted to interject that
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to meet Walt Fry. Walt was an amazing aviculturist. He worked with red bents, and
Mhm.
we used to, meet at conferences, and I would just like drink in all the information that he had. And he had a supplement that he made. It was Dr. Walt's, some kind of supplement, and I would learn from him. And one day we were at Parrot Festival down in Houston, and I said to him, "So, have you written all this down?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, where is it? Where's the information?" He said, "It's right here."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I said, "Have you thought about having an intern? Oh, it's too much work." Okay.
Right.
Well, Walt and his lovely wife were killed in a car accident. Nobody knew
Wow.
he wasn't sick. It wasn't, impending death. It just happened. And all of that information's gone. So I absolutely understand what you're saying. I mean, and Jeannie is another great example. Jeannie Pattison is, you know,
Right.
Jeannie had more information in her little finger than I have, that I have in several lifetimes. So yeah.
Definitely. And it's also interesting, right? Just the way that this generation is learning, because a lot of the time we say, we want to get the younger generation into aviculture. We want to introduce them to this lovely hobby, but I believe we have to meet them where they're at. And they're not the biggest readers, I'd say. They're more into short form content. They like to swipe and scroll. And if they're not able to get exposed to the hobby through the avenue that they're on all the time, I don't think they'll ever will ever get that interest. So we're talking TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, really being able to get content out there for them to see exactly what we do. I think that's going to be a really big key going forward.
Definitely. And I mean, and you bring up a really good point. This next generation, the up and coming generation, does learn this way. I mean, my son he's a little bit older, but I ask him to do something happens with his car. I'm going to look at I'm going to watch the YouTube.
Yep.
Wait, what? And then I think about my dad who would say to my husband, put that in your machine. That meant Google it on your phone. Put that in your
Right.
machine. And so, even in that small space between my dad and my son, it's so vast. And you're right. I can give kids books all day long, but that's not going to happen. And I personally learn hands-on. So if I can
Okay.
watch someone doing something, I'm going to take it to that next step. So, excuse me. So how do we, how do we connect, Mark? How do we, you know, in today's avicultural world, social
Mhm.
media, do you think is it positive that that's the way kids are learning, or is it maybe hurting it a little bit?
I think it is positive. I think any avenue where learning is happening is going to be positive, but the disconnect is I think a lot of great aviculturists, they're not on those channels. So if we're not on those channels, the narrative for what we do, we don't really have a say in that. So if someone says, parrot keeping is terrible and everyone should stop keeping parrots and the real parrot keepers aren't on those platforms, that narrative will just continue to be pushed on for others to absorb. So I do think we definitely need to get on board with this, and it doesn't have to be perfect. If we're just sharing a little bit of what we do and just giving people a day in the life of a parrot keeper, I think that would truly change the hobby forever. I mean, one interesting thing is, we have some famous parrots. There's green cheek conures, lovebirds with 3 million followers. Now, this is probably more followers than all of aviculturists combined,
Mhm.
when it comes to reach and influence. So if someone with one green cheek has more influence than someone with 300, that's where we have an imbalance in information and knowledge. And I think we definitely need to jump into the conversation. We have a lot to share.
We didn't really talk about this ahead of time, but I'm going to throw a question at you. So we've got, we've got the individual influencer, we've got the person who has the study of one. Susan Friedman says that behavior is a study of one. So we've got that person with the one bird telling people what they do. So how do I decide, as the consumer of that information, how do I decide, okay, Susie with the cockatoo knows what she's talking about, but maybe Mary over here with the Moluccan doesn't have any clue. How do I vet that information?
That's the interesting thing about social media. It's all about trust, right? So someone may not have valid information, but if they appear trustworthy, if they appear that they have knowledge, that knowledge will continue to spread as truth. So that's the interesting thing. Nothing's verified. You know, yeah, it's a tough world, right? So we have so much information getting thrown at us, and it's really hard to decipher who's right and who's wrong. And in the
Mhm.
world of parrot keeping, there can be five right answers to one question. So it makes it even more complicated. But I
Yeah.
think that's an even bigger reason why we need to be in the conversation as well, because we can throw so many different ideas and strategies that can help people across the world.
Yeah. I remember I used to, when I was doing enrichment, creating enrichment talks and things, I would, the question always came up about toxic things that were toxic, plants that were toxic, and
Right.
what was bird safe. And you could go online and find 20 different lists. And people are like, well, how do I know what to believe? And it's the same with the content that's being developed. And I used to tell people, take 3 or 4 of them, and then compare them. If something is across the board on all 4 lists, then okay, it's probably correct that that is not, that it's bird safe or that it's not bird safe. But I think you have to kind of assimilate all that information into your own style,
Yes.
so that it's not just, oh well, I don't know. Would you suggest people look to different sources? Because I feel like if you just put all your eggs, it's that old, all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
You count. I know that this one person. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to follow them. Um,
Exactly. I agree with that stance. I definitely try to diversify in a sense with the different sources, just because everyone's got a different experience with their parrot keeping journey, and what may work for someone may not work for you. So I agree with that. Definitely having multiple sources and just comparing and contrasting, continuing to ask questions, and try to verify some things for yourself on the internet as well, in
right. And
encyclopedias and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think too, it's each parrot and each parrot situation is different. So you've got, I might be able to tell you that I know this works great for African grays. Is that really true? I mean, your
Right.
African gray might think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and my African gray might be like, yeah, no, I don't want to deal with that. Um, so I mean, you got to live the life too. I mean, I think that's important. Um,
Absolutely.
so division's not a good word, gaps between breeders and the parrot community as a whole. Um,
Mhm.
where's the disconnect happening?
I definitely, yeah, that's a great question, because when I look at, different breeders across Facebook and Instagram, I don't believe they're using social media as a tool, right? They are using it when it comes to expressing, these are the birds I have available. This is a picture of my birds today. But I believe that to truly grow the hobby, I think we're going to have to show a lot more. We're going to have to be a lot more expressive. So when
Mhm.
it comes to most parakeepers, I know most of us are on the conservative side. We don't like to share too much, but I think to truly grow community, we'll have to, hey, this is what my birds are eating today. This is what it looks like when I'm cleaning cages. Like really giving the audience a real life walkthrough of what parrot keeping looks like, and that's what I try to do on YouTube. Just showing the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and really just give people an idea on what parrot keeping is like. And I think if the larger breeders did this, it would allow people to truly understand what breeders do.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the time you have people say that all breeders are terrible, and they're forcing birds to breed. And if that were possible, a lot of breeders would be multimillionaires, right? So and having birds in terrible conditions, I don't know many African grays that will breed in horrible conditions. They have to have adequate nutrition and exercise and stuff like that. So I do think it's a good point. We definitely have to share a lot more and whether it's short form, it can be a simple Instagram story. It can be a simple reel of just, okay, this is how I prepare my food. And a lot of knowledge will be spread exponentially just because of small actions like that. We don't have to have a 20-minute YouTube video. Just give us 30 seconds and show the world what you're doing to try to change the narrative a bit here.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic advice. You know, back in the day, it was breeders didn't share anything, and
Right.
everything was very secretive. And it was, I have my way of doing this, and no, you're not going to know that. And there's been progress made. I will say
Absolutely.
that. But I love, the idea of, and TJ was on before. I don't know if he's still on, but TJ he's come on a couple times, and he's willing to share like what he's doing and how he, enriches naturally, things like that. And that's the big thing. That's what needs to happen. And there's a lot of pushback right now. I mean, being in New York, there's a lot of pushback right now on sales of parrots. There's, there, and people, it's that everybody in this category is bad, everybody in this category is good, and never the
Right.
twain shall meet. And I think if there were some, and maybe you need to help, you and Nick and you guys who like have a clue, or actually Nick Mark did admit before we went on that it's his fiance that makes him look good. So so thank you to her.
Yes.
But working with people in aviculture, people who are actually breeding, people who are keeping parrots, in big numbers, helping them, working with them on how to make a positive image. I mean, how do we combat that, Mark? How do we, when you put a post up about, I know Jason's on too, Jason's been a guest on the journal. And, when Jason puts up a picture of baby birds, there's, people on the thread that are like, oh, that's horrible. How can you do that? How do we combat that?
I'll be quite honest. When it comes to social media in general, there will always be a lot of hate coming in no matter what you're doing. And we can't beat them all, but we can continue to be transparent and show exactly, or maybe explain those complex topics that have created a lot of confusion amongst non-parrot keepers. Just maybe make a quick video explaining why I use this type of toy, why I use this type of bowl, or why this cage is adequate for this species.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people may make generalizations across all parrot species when every species has different care requirements and specialized approach to things. So yeah, you can't win them all, can't win every battle, but we can definitely use those negative comments as a learning lesson, right? Whenever I see a negative comment, I say, okay, there goes another video idea that I can, help educate the audience a bit more, and hopefully that person sees that video and takes that in, because a lot of the negativity comes from ignorance. It comes from people not knowing, what that specific care strategy is for and what we're attempting to do.
Yeah, no, and that's so very true. I mean, it's absolutely true. And I think, bird owners, as a companion parrot owner, those folks are looking for that personal touch, that I want to learn, but I want to learn how you do it. I want to learn what you're doing. And I think, bridging that gap that way with more content, more positive content,
Right.
would really help with that. And so, in your experience, does it have to be fancy I mean, it doesn't, right? I mean, that's not what you do. It's
Right. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I think simplicity is always key. I mean, there are, like, when you look at some influencers, they do a lot of fancy editing, but with if you're showing the right thing, basically, I'll turn back a bit here. So with like the short form videos, if we're looking at the reels or the Instagram stories, there needs to be a hook. And that hook can be a visual hook. It can be a very beautiful bird. It can be a very large bird, or it can be a very small bird. It can just be something to really hook the audience when the video first starts. If you can hook the audience, you can educate the audience, because you can just follow up with education while working with that beautiful bird or that interesting food item. So I
Mhm.
believe it's very simple as long as there's some form of hook, whether it's a story or Instagram reel or YouTube video. In the beginning, if you can capture the audience's attention and
Mhm.
then deliver your information, I think we'll be a lot more successful. Because
I think
I
we'll
know, yep,
go ahead.
yeah, definitely. Bird keepers are super busy, so I get, a lot of people may say I don't have time to take my phone out every morning and record, but we do such fascinating things. And I think if we could just turn the camera on for 30 seconds, 30 seconds a day, I believe we can really do a lot of good in the agriculture space.
Well, and I think too, along those lines, a lot of times we take for granted what we do and what
Right,
you do, and in breeding birds and in keeping birds. And I always tell people, not everybody. Don't ever think that, oh, that's an old idea or that's a stupid idea, and nobody else
right,
wants to know that, because it may be the one thing that makes somebody else's bird stop feather destructive behavior, or and just sharing that information. And Michelle shared here, sounds like the goal is to share our authentic self with confidence and love, and just keep moving forward, hoping it helps someone do better. That's the nail on the head right there. I mean, well said, Michelle. But yeah, I um, So things with recent breeder trends. What do we need to learn from that, Mark? What can we take away from the recent trends with breeders?
For sure, definitely, and I'm always watching Facebook, Instagram, different breeders, seeing what's going on, watching the markets on different forums, just to see exactly what's and looking at COVID. I know there was a big boom. A lot of breeders came onto the scene, and it was fascinating. You know, there were people that I never thought would get into birds who are now breeding birds, and I was just amazed. But that influx of breeders caused almost like a boom and bust cycle. We saw almost, if I count correctly, almost 30 new green cheek conure breeders. And, you know, it almost flooded the market in a sense. Now everyone's breeding green cheek conures, and the result of that was prices began to plummet. You know, the supply and demand, supply increased, and everyone began to get a bit more competitive and lower prices as a result. But you know, whenever that happens, a lot of people will say, you know, the market is terrible right now. But my question is the market terrible or is your marketing terrible? Right? It comes down to how you're sharing your birds, how you're, you know, allowing people to see what you've brought forth to the market. And I think
Mhm.
everyone is essentially sharing their birds in the same manner, the same baby picture style, the same photo. And I think bringing that different element of, you know, that short form video, you know, just showing yourself hand feeding the birds, showing
Mhm.
yourself offering different foods during the weaning process, showing different types of enrichment. You're famous for this. I didn't even know there were this many types of enrichment, but you've really pioneered things on that front. But really just expressing and showing everything, I think that will be the difference maker to allow people to find more homes for their babies. And this is rescues and breeders because they both have the same problem at times. And I really truly believe just bringing that innovative touch to showing the baby birds and adult birds that you have available will change, you know, the amount of birds that you can find homes for. So it's going to
Yep.
take that different touch for sure.
Mhm. I know, I don't know if you're familiar with hornbeam aviary. Um,
Yes.
Okay, so Miguel does a lot of here's what we're doing today, and these are our birds,
Yeah.
and this is why they like this. And that style, for me, is much more engaging than a series of just photos, or just, these birds for sale this week. And I think not only with just breeders, but with any of us that are trying to share knowledge, to educate. That hook still has to happen. I mean, I
Right.
when I do a promo for the live stream, I have to make sure that it's not people going, "Well, what is that about?"
Right.
The title has to be engaging, and we could talk all day about a very mundane subject, but if I called it something really cool, and then I
Yeah.
had flashy pictures to go with it, I mean, it
Hmm.
works. And it's not bait and switch because you still have that great product and you have that great knowledge that you want to share, but you gotta convince other people of that. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
you know,
I definitely agree with that. It's like the best way to share anything is to entertain. So there has to be an entertainment element to it. You have to pique their interest. Just a photo won't do it anymore. But there was a time, if we look back in 2015 to 2017, photos were great on Instagram. They were performing very well. But now that the algorithm has changed, it's really about how much attention can you grab? And if you can't
right.
grab any attention, they won't push the video any farther than a few friends and family.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
trying to reach significant amounts. So yeah.
It's so true. And it's a matter, I remember when you talk about you have to entertain. So
Mhm.
I remember when the term edutainment came about. It was
Yes.
in IAATE, we used to talk a lot about edutainment because most of the members were doing big bird shows at big facilities, with birds flying, but you still needed to educate. Um, so it's really, um, Michelle says, "Am I supposed to be checking the posts? I thought we all just had you on on our calendars Friday night." Yes, you should be here on Friday night, and we're gonna have Mark on more often, so it's all good. Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, I mean, it's that edutainment. It's that because, if you've ever seen me present, not just on this, but anybody that's seen me present knows that I use a lot of humor.
Yeah.
It's people, it's that old thing that, teachers did this to us for years. They tried to convince us that we weren't really learning, right? They entertain the good teachers. If you think back to the teachers in your life, they were the ones that had fun stuff going on in their classroom, or they took you out and had you experiencing things. And
Right.
that really resonated with me. So when I do a presentation, there's a lot of humor involved, because if people are laughing, they're learning. I really believe that.
Yes.
Um, Thank you, Nick. Nick says I have a calming voice and I'm willing to meet people where they are. Um, but my husband might disagree with you. I don't know if he's still on, but he stops in on Friday nights. It's good. So we've seen that kind of switch, that shift. So
Mhm.
what about what do you do when someone? How do you get over? Um, well, you're just doing this because you want to make money.
I think, and someone mentioned this in the comments too, is you really have, and this is why we need the videos, because the pictures can make it look like you're just trying to get money. Oh, you just every time you only post on Facebook when your baby's available. Okay, great. In this case, I think if we begin to film ourselves talking, film ourselves happy, we can show the love. Because
Mhm.
we all know when someone is authentic and when they're not. You can easily tell. And if we're sharing and showing our true selves, I believe
Mhm.
people will see the passion, they will see the love, they will see the attention. And I'm guilty of this as well. When I was breeding, I was a faceless Instagram page for almost 10 years. Well, let's call it 5 to 6 years. I was a faceless Instagram page, just the
Mhm.
birds, nothing about me. And I think if I would have integrated myself, I would have been able to build more of a community, because they can see me, they can interact with me, they can talk with me. We're all just one big happy family, and I think that's the way to really build community. We have
Yeah,
to share ourselves as well as the birds.
I absolutely agree, and I think a lot of our listeners are uh, companion parrot owners, and I feel like I know them from this interaction, this kind of exchange, the comments that people are here all the time. Laura says very relatable. Yeah, I mean, and that's the important thing. I mean, it's not about standing there and being stiff as a board and just all serious, and because nobody's going to ask questions, and I love questions because questions
Right.
generate more dialogue, and
Exactly.
I think that's so important. But I
Totally
think
agree.
and you have made yourself very relatable, and it's and you also play nice in all the arenas. I think that's important too.
Right.
There's
I
not
agree.
a big divide.
Definitely. And I think that's an interesting topic as well, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. Breeders, rescues, just general parrot keepers, we're all on the same team, and it's for the betterment of the birds. We're all on this, have the same mission. And I think if we can all, align to that and understand that, we would be a lot better off as a hobby. Because like you
Mhm.
said, there are organizations looking to attack parrot keeping in general. And
Yeah.
this is a time for us to come together instead of being divisive, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's very important for me is, I mean, there's something to take away from every aspect of aviculture, whether it's conservation, whether it's breeding, rescue, store owners, companion parrot owners. There's something. I mean, I always learn. So Joanna owns Bird Fever in Indianapolis, where you need to go visit. I'm going this summer.
Good.
So Joanna, Mark's going to be on his way over soon. Um,
Yes.
She's wondering, what platforms do you prefer? And I will tell you, Joanna was recently removed from Facebook,
Hmm.
her business page, due to some. trolling. And so I know Joanna's looking for a new way to get to her audience. So which ones
Right.
do you like?
Second here. Excellent. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 1 second. I think. What about
Did you?
now? I can't hear you.
Yes.
Okay, we're all good now. So if
Okay.
I'm talking about different platforms, I'd say TikTok. TikTok, in my opinion, is a platform where you can get the most organic reach. Looking at Instagram, I feel like it's a lot more difficult to really get organic followers considering how established the platform is. But in
Mhm.
my opinion, TikTok is in growth mode still, and when you post something, you do get significant reach. It's been very interesting to really test these different platforms and see which ones I can really reach the most people on, and TikTok, in my opinion, would be the best. Next,
Okay.
I would say YouTube for short form content,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, I definitely pick TikTok number one.
Okay. So Joanna, I expect to see a TikTok for bird fever. Just saying. TJ had a question. He said, "Do you have any advice for younger aviculturists that do have some social media engagement, but mostly with other more established aviculturists? Like, how can we appeal to our younger peers to take an interest?"
Yeah, that's. I think to really capture the attention of the younger viewers, I think we're going to have to really pull in a fun element within agriculture. So instead of the hardcore topics like okay, diet, uh, cage size and stuff of that sort, let's just start off with parrots in general. Show people how you handle parrots. Show people the personality of parrots because there are many people that have no idea that you can actually handle and build a bond with a parrot. So I think if we can really meet them where they're at and show them that this is a viable, this is an amazing pet that one could have. Show them personality, show them their coloration, their different attributes. I think that's a way we can really reach that younger audience. And once they take an interest, then we can begin to give them more knowledge on care from there. But I do think, unfortunately, you've got to go with that entertainment aspect of just showing them the fun side of parrot keeping, and then go into the serious side once the community begins to develop a bit more. So I
Yep.
think that would,
So
yeah,
TJ is Mark. Just yeah. This was Carrie asked, "What do you recommend for the person who does not know how to turn on the TV?" And this is true. I will tell you that about her. And TJ's suggestion was a glass of wine, and I'm right there with him. But TJ does not breed citizens. He breeds a lot of very, very cool birds. And I
good,
think, for me, exposing people to uh, those different species, or, if you're talking about citizens, exposing them to birds that you're not going to see in every pet store, that you're not going, I think I remember the first time I saw a greater Vasa, and I
oh
was just
yeah,
like, wait, what? That's not a parrot. And yeah, it was. And then I learned about them, and they're super cool. And the Eclectus Arc, I learned from those guys about Vasas, and it was really exciting. And I think, you know, there are ways, again, we're back to that whole idea, make it fun.
yeah,
And, I think to answer, or part of the answer to TJ's question is too, um, we have to figure out where to find that audience too.
yeah,
Is it 4-H? Is it scouting? Is it, schools? And it's tough now with schools because a lot of schools don't allow animals in the classroom. So
right,
that's difficult. But, so when you're building your audience, how do you, I guess because there has to be yeah, Vasas, love them. So there's got to be, how do you spread the target? I guess is the question. How do you take it from, okay, I know who my market is. I know who my audience is. I want to talk to senior aviculturists who have been doing this for a while, and I don't have to dumb anything down. Well, first of all, you should never dumb anything down.
right,
But because that's, for me, that's not being fair to your audience and to the people that are trying to learn.
hmm
Um, So how do you make it work for everybody? Or can it?
Yeah, it's tough. Like you definitely have to pick your target audience, but you can diversify in terms of the content that you produce. So you don't
Mhm.
have to produce all beginner content or all intermediate content. You could do a mix of both, and that's what I try to do now as well. So I don't believe you have to really go hardcore and focus on that specific subsector there.
Mhm.
Um, like for example, when it comes to the tours that I do, so the one I went to, Todd Marcus Birds Exotic, that attracted people from all walks of life, people that don't want a parrot and want nothing to do with parrots, and people that are hardcore parrot lovers. So
Mhm.
something like that, just showing people your parrot collection could be extremely entertaining for people across all walks of life. And then you can follow on the next video with, this is the diet that I feed this type of parrot, and this is the diet that I feed this other type of parrot. So there's just so many possibilities that we can come up with that we experience in our everyday life. We just overlook it because it's become just a regular day for us. But we literally almost live in a zoo, so so it's interesting.
And there are days when it's more zoo-like than others. Michelle says, if we have a large online exposure via Zoom, Shadow, who is her bird, is considered the mascot of a lot of her Weight Watchers meetings, as well as other meetings that she attends. So it's that, people, so people still think it's super cool to have parrots because it
Right.
is. But people who don't have them and people who aren't into aviculture, who don't get to work with like the cool birds that TJ works with every day,
Yeah.
um, it's easy to capture that. It's just how do you keep that? The person that sees you with your bird and is like, oh, that's so cool. I've never seen one of those before. How do you turn that? So this is kind of like in business. How do you
Right.
turn that into a customer? How do you turn that into a lifelong aviculturist? How do you make that
So
transition?
I really don't think there's much of a big transition. I think, like for example, the one you mentioned, she's on the Zoom meetings and people are falling in love with her bird, right? So from there, I'd say, okay, great. I'm going to make a TikTok for my bird. I'm going to share the link with all of my friends here, and just continue to create content, just simple content. And
Yeah.
for some, just if you look back at the example when I was at Parrots of the World and I fell in love with birds and Mark Marone really planted the seed, it was a very simple interaction. I was just watching birds. All I did was
Mhm.
see a bunch of beautiful birds. I interacted with them, and I went home and did the research on my own time. So just someone seeing your collection, just someone seeing your bird can trigger them to go off and research as much as they can. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's definitely it's much more simpler. It's much more simpler than it seems. It's just a matter of someone just falling in love with the bird, falling in love with what you do. I don't think we
Yeah.
need to overcomplicate it and overplan. I think it's just a matter of just continuing to share constantly, whether it's
Mhm.
once a day or once a week. Just share whatever you're comfortable with, because I know a lot of agricultures. There's a bit of fear with sharing, when it
Mhm.
comes to sharing your collection, sharing different techniques that you may do. But if we want to build a community, we're going to have to open the door a little bit and show a lot more. I understand there's a lot of theft and robbery in the community, and some are afraid to show the layout of their aviary, and so no one can come back and take their birds. But we can do it in a safe way. I believe we can.
So, what's your take on um, honesty?
Hmm.
So, there are a lot of creators, digital creators who do the everything's, hearts and flowers, unicorns and rainbows 24/7.
Right.
We know that's not true.
Exactly. Yeah. I definitely try to show the ups and the downs, because just like you said, when it comes to parrot keeping, it's a roller coaster. They're essentially wild animals at the end of the day, and things do happen every day. So I try to show everything. I show, if let's for example, if my birds are having a disagreement and they're screaming at each other, that can be really disturbing for the average person living in their house to have two birds yelling. I mean, that's something I would share. If
Mhm.
I bought them a $50 toy and they destroyed it in 10 seconds, that's pretty frustrating, but that's what birds do. This is what they do. It's a pretty expensive hobby. So I think we should show everything. I know there's a lot of, I guess it's easier to just show the good side of things, to just really glorify the hobby, but I believe people should know what they're getting into, and I don't want to, just show the good side and mislead someone into a big decision like getting a parrot.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the responsible side of things. For
Yeah,
those of us who are doing education, I think it's really important that you tell people, it's not always fun and games. And so,
right.
those of you that are, you have a video that says you spent $20,000 on your African gray parrots.
Oh
Nick
yeah,
says you, yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I bought quite a bit. We actually did another video at Parrot Stars. I think this was about 4 months ago, where I did a little shopping spree in the store.
Mhm.
Spent a bunch there as well. So it's such an expensive hobby. They destroy the toys in days, but they had a good time. So that's all that
Yeah, and
matters.
that's the thing. I mean, I love it when people say to me, "Oh, well, the bird's going to destroy that in 2 days." Excellent. Not because I want to
Right.
sell you another, but that's the purpose.
Exactly.
Michelle says, "Hang on tight. It's going to be a wild ride." Um,
Oh yeah.
and Carrie says she can help if you want with bad decisions. Just saying, it's true.
Got
It's so true.
it.
In
Yep.
case you ever need any. I was just gonna say, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So with the live cams from Bird Gardens of Naples, so
Hmm.
there are nights when Carrie, it's time to put the Nene geese away, and I have heard some choice stuff out of her mouth, and I don't, she's got to tame it down a little bit because now she has live cams. Yeah, so when she's putting the nays away, sometimes it used to be I'd be on the phone with her and there'd be, some interesting verbiage, but now she's behaving. But the reality of it is sometimes it's not, you don't always use your pretty words, in aviculture. It's true.
Exactly. Yeah, the mess never ends. We're always cleaning something.
Yeah,
It's just there's it's fun at the end of the day, but yeah, there's definitely frustrating periods.
yeah, definitely. So storytelling, I think, talk to me about storytelling because I think you have a really good handle on that.
For sure. I really do think that's the most important part in really building your community. So when I first started my YouTube channel, I started it off with a video of me going to pick up my African grays. And people in general, they like to follow the story. They like to see it through. So you want to take them on a journey. You want to take them on a trip. You want them to be entertained. So I started with the video of me getting the birds. Then I followed up with a video of me establishing their cage, setting up their cage, and getting them all happy and comfortable. And from there, I just continued to take it one video at a time, showing them another piece of or a life update of this
Mhm.
this journey with these two African gray parrots. And I think it's almost like a series, like a Netflix series. People want to see the next episode. What's going on with this guy and these two African grays? Is he
Yeah.
tired of them yet? What's going? And it just fuels so much curiosity. And sometimes you can exaggerate a bit to draw some activity and
Yeah.
viewership, but it's we just have so much to share, and if we just break it up into bite-sized chunks, we'll never run out of ideas for content. So
It's
I
true.
think that will be, yeah, that'll be the main, that's my main goal. I'm just going to continue to, and if I just, for example, if I find a product that I think is great for parrots but is typically made for people, I'm going to make a
Mhm.
video update. Guys, I just found this amazing product. My birds love it, and people just really enjoy being updated and seeing what's happening next in our lives. And I think that's something all of us breeders can do. Like, for example, a breeder can say, "Oh, today this egg hatched. I can't believe it." Just a quick 30-second video would really make thousands of people's day. They would love to see something like that because we're just not exposed. Normal people aren't exposed to parrot eggs hatching. So
Right.
I think it would be, yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, we tend to take things for granted that,
Right.
everybody knows what that looks like when an African gray egg hatches. No, they don't. And for me, I make toys all day long. And so it's like, you just throw the knot on here and hang it this way, and people go, huh? And so like when I do a DIY with people, if I do a Zoom and because we have a Zoom group, the foraging flock, that we meet once a month, and
Hmm.
we talk about foraging ideas, things like that. And they asked if I would do a DIY, just because it's not everybody doesn't create the same way. And I think,
Right.
from an enrichment standpoint, that's I learn something every time I present, because somebody in the audience inevitably says, "Oh, I do this," and it's something that blows me away that I've never heard before. And then
Exactly.
I can add that to my repertoire. But it's again, it's that sharing piece. And that's, you do that so well. And I really applaud you for that. So,
I
um,
appreciate that. I think you made a great point there, just in terms of like when I post a video, I get so just the comments that I receive. Some may be critical, they may not like parrot keeping, but there's some aviculturists that are in the comment section just sharing their experience that could greatly help me in my journey. So I think just you sharing can open it up for you to learn even more, just like you just mentioned. And it's just like a chain reaction. Just
yeah.
you just start building a community over time, and people will look forward to going in the comments section because they know there's some agriculturists down there having a nice little conversation, and you may be able to
Mhm.
pick up a few gems. So
Yeah.
it becomes a hub of information.
And I think it's building that community, building that. And it can't just be about you. Great, you're the face behind African Gray Journal, but it's the people that are able to kind of build up that community. Because if you don't
Right.
have that, and I've witnessed over my career, I've witnessed people, communities that have expanded and really blossomed. And then I've seen others that have just disappeared,
Right.
or significantly decreased in the number of people. And it's, in person, online, you name it, all of it's happened because we are getting more. There's that distance that happens, and I don't have to interact. And that's why, yeah, Carrie says, just like on the road trip, we learned something from everyone. Every single rescue we stopped at last year, we learned something new. They each did something different. um, and it's just that expansion that needs to happen.
Yes.
So I
Exactly.
you know, so just to kind of wrap it up, Mark, if people, so from both sides of it, if people want to create that community,
Hmm.
what words of wisdom do you have for them?
Well, I would just say if you want to create a community, just be your authentic self because that's enough. Everything you
Mhm.
do right now, someone wants to see. There's just not enough people willing to share that side of them. So if you can take your life and just share a little bit of it, I guarantee a community will form because we live such an amazing life with fascinating events happening every day, and people want to have eyes on that as well. So it's as simple as this: just share. Just
Mhm.
tomorrow, just start. Just post the video. And if we can get 100 agriculturists to post a video tomorrow about whatever they're doing with their birds, we will create a whirlwind of interest in aviculture.
Challenge. There we go. That's what it is. It's a challenge. Mark just put out a
It's a
challenge
challenge.
there to all
That's
those
right.
aviculturists out there. That's awesome. And I think, it's so important. And then the flip side of that, people who want to learn, people who, so how do they ask where do they go to ask their questions? Where do they go to kind of broaden their horizons?
That's a great question, and like we said earlier, the avenues that I use to learn are no longer viable. So I believe it's going to come down to jumping onto Facebook, meet the breeders where they're at. And most of the breeders are in Facebook. There's multiple Facebook groups. The AFA, you could connect with the AFA and really meet with different breeders and parrot keepers that can share a ton of knowledge with you. So it would have to be those channels. I believe they say the average aviculturist is a little close to 65 years old. So we have to jump onto Facebook, meet everyone where they're at, find these groups, and just begin to start conversation. People
Mhm.
like Tony Silva, Steve Duncan, Steve Garvin, just just Dr. Jason Crean. I mean, they're willing to share this information. You just have to send a message. And
All right, I am
I,
so gonna get you out of trouble right now
yeah,
because you talked about people being 65 and then you mentioned Jason. He's
no,
gonna
no,
come
no.
after you for statements like
No, that was
so
definitely a separate conversation there. I split it. I split it. So definitely not.
that was my fault. But no, I think so. Are you gonna come to AFA?
You know what? I have to consider it. I'll have to take the time off. I should. I should. I've
Yeah,
got to do
you
it.
should.
You know what I did? I bought the virtual session last year and the year before. So now that I'm flying a little bit more now, I should totally come down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that networking. And I think that's one thing
Yes,
that we didn't, we've talked about all these wonderful avenues digitally. And I think you're right. It is so important. But there's nothing like old fashioned networking. If you can
that
get
is
to a
true.
place, that's what needs to happen. And yes, Carrie, they are great mentors. That's the thing. I mean, I had Dick Schroeder on with Hornbills last week,
Oh yeah.
and or the week before. And, John Del Rio was joking that I needed to have Roland Christo because I had a Lorella Desborough. All of them are
Mhm.
icons in the
Yeah.
agricultural world. And, and I'm sure they will all admit none of us are getting any younger, so but yeah, thank you so much. We
Oh,
all of I'm gonna, all of a lot of us are going to be there, so you need to come, and it's not
awesome.
that far. I'll pick you up on my way by. I'm coming from Maine.
Got
I'll swing,
it.
pick you up. But thank you again, Mark. And so
Sure.
people can, we've got the QR code here for the African Gray Journal, and they
Mhm.
should check out your content because now that they've had a taste of how much fun you are, this is
Thank
the
you.
edutainment. This is where they're going to learn. So thank you very much,
Absolutely.
and we will have you back again if you'll
Thank you.
join us. So,
It was such a pleasure being on the program today. So I'd love to come back on and chat with you a bit more. This was phenomenal.
all right, thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Next week, everybody, we won't have a live stream. It's 4th of July, and I don't want to compete with the fireworks. So. You guys all have a great week, and I will see you back the following week. We're going to talk about animal rights versus animal welfare. Have a good time.